Dating in China is absolutely different from that in the West, and not always for the better. My name is Aina. I have been living in China for 4 years, and today I'm going to be talking about surprising facts and all truth about dating culture in China. I'm going to be talking about how Chinese people meet, which requirements they have for their partner, and which problems they frequently meet in their relationships. I'm not sure whether you'll be very surprised if I tell you that Chinese dating is very much influenced by the Chinese traditions. There is a concept in China, xiaoshun, which is translated as filial piety. It was introduced by Confucius, and basically his teachings were you have to follow the vertical hierarchy where the older generations have to be respected and the younger generation has to obey whatever the elders have to say. And that is why Asians who were born in these traditions of vertical hierarchy do not understand the Westerners who can even shout and swear at their own parents.
Oh, but sweetie, I don't think KFC and McDonald's is good for you.
Did I ask for you to speak? Huh? When did I ask for you to speak? Huh? Give me $30 now.
Because Chinese people actually believe that since the day you are born, you owe your family all your life. And also in the ancient book, which is called the Classic of Filial Piety, it was advised for people not to shave, not to cut their hair, because it comes from your parents and that is why it has to be cherished. Interestingly enough, I have heard that that is why women do not even shave their public hair because they follow this tradition. I'm not sure how true it is, but but it is true that, women do have really, really long hair. And I tell you this because I have seen it myself when I go to the gym and see women totally naked, and yeah, it was really, really shocking to see like hair this long. Literally this long. Chinese people, they as if follow some sort of stages of life. For example, when they are 15 to 20 years old, they have to immensely focus on their studies. And that is why the love that happens at that time, which is called 早恋, basically translated as early love, is very much condemned by the society and by the parents. Because people believe when you're at that age, at that stage of life, you have to focus heavily on your studies. And then when you're 20, 25, of course, you have to get your bachelor's and you have to get your master's degree and you have to start working. And by the way, the legal age for marriage here is 20 for women and 22 for men. Please let me know in the comments which age is legal for marriage in your country, because in my country, the legal age for marriage is 18 years old, but I was very surprised to hear that here in China, the legal age is 20 and 22. And then when you're 25 to 30 years old, especially if you are a girl, your parents will start to 催婚, which basically means to hurry to get married.
什么样的年纪好像是应该要结婚了
25岁到30岁之间吧，可能30岁在
And girls are being hurried at that stage of life because if they are over 30 years old and they're still not married, then they're called a 剩女, which basically means a leftover woman.
就像吃饭都剩下的菜一样的，变成就是什么？
What do you think, guys? Is it ethical to call women leftover? Alright, now it's time to talk about some responsibilities and expectations from each partner. And let's start with the males. Chinese men, before they get married, they actually have to build a so-called Chinese dream. Chinese dream is an American dream, is to buy a house and to buy a car even before your marriage. And the question is, how the hell a boy of 25 to 30 years old who just started working already can buy the most expensive real estate on earth, which is located in China? And the answer is usually his parents and he himself, they get into huge debts. And on top of this, of course, guys are expected to have a stable job. But certainly some women, still date the guys who do not meet those, golden standards. But in those cases, usually their parents do not allow those girls, those precious daughters, to date the guy who doesn't have a house or a car or a stable job.
Money is first.
你没有这个房子，没有这个收入，no，不行。
And parents would do anything possible to force the girl to break up with that guy. They would lock her in the house, I know such cases, or they would persuade or anything else. But it usually doesn't happen. What usually happens, women already, without the help of the parents, already have those standards in their mind.
还有上海最起码有房有稳定的收入，然后养活家庭，房子要加入我的名字，然后给个20万给我，还要养我。
And not only these three requirements are expected from Chinese men, which is the house, the car, and the stable job, but also if they want to get married, they have to be prepared for giving their future bride a 彩礼. 彩礼, what's this in English? Okay, I just Googled. It literally means a bride price. So what is this bride price for? Well, in modern realities, this bride price basically serves as the initial capital for the young family. They have to live on some money in the first stages, right? So that's what it serves for. But according to the tradition, this bride price was usually given by the groom to the bride's family because daughters used to be a very helpful assistants in the Chinese household. So if, you give away your daughter, if you marry your daughter, you would expect some money from the groom's family because you're basically giving away your worker. As for the role of women, okay, things are getting more complicated here, okay? Women who right now are aged 20 and above, they are usually the only children in their families, and that is why their parents, of course, have great hopes and great expectations from those daughters. Not only they expect to successfully get her married, but also to have a successful career. That is why they invest heavily in their daughters. They educate them and then they force them, to build a very successful career because later in life, who else will take care of those parents when they get older? And I have to mention one very important characteristic of Chinese women because they can go into two different extremes. They can be whether very infantile or very childish, in other words, or they can get very aggressive. And sometimes you can meet both in one woman. Chinese women have a very mighty tool in their hands. This tool can help them get out of any problem or of any conflict in their lives. And Chinese men adore this quality in their partners. And this quality is called 撒娇.
哪里做错了？老公。
撒娇 actually has no English equivalent because, well, it just doesn't exist in the West as it exists in China. In the West, it's kind of, if you behave 撒娇, it's mostly very, very cringy. I'll try to explain 撒娇 very quickly. Actually, dogs behave in a 撒娇 way. For example, they would break something in your house and then they would look at you in this 撒娇 way and you would immediately forgive them. I know I'll receive a lot of mean comments after this. Okay, and I also have to mention that some guys expect their girlfriends to call them 哥哥. 哥哥 basically means an elder brother, and you probably already heard of the word oppa.
오빠라고 불러도 돼요?
In Korean, it also means elder brother. So Chinese people also love this word. For example, my ex-boyfriend, he would ask me a few times to call him 哥哥. And when he first heard it, I literally remember his reaction. He was like, oh, wow, that sounds amazing. Yeah, I was like, I looked at him because at that time, it was for me literally a cultural shock. I was like, are you a pervert or something? something. Of course, I didn't say that, but that's what I thought. Another nickname boyfriends expect their girlfriends to call them is baba, which is daddy. And I think it's not rare in the West as well.
Every baby needs a daddy.
Here, even if a guy is, like 5 years older, he would still expect you to call him baba.
Baba.
And here, I actually have a dirty secret that I'm keeping. I myself behave in a sadia way. And before, I didn't even know I behave in a sadia way in my own relationships until I started studying Chinese, and then I came across this word sadia, and then I was like, wait a second, that is actually how I behave myself in my own relationships. If you want to know more about sadia, let me know in the comments below. Although Chinese girls can be very childlike, but at the same time, they can get extremely aggressive. Let me tell you one story. My ex's ex-girlfriend, when I was in his old house, I would notice that his door had a lot of knife scratches, and it seemed like somebody took an axe and would hit on the door.
Here's Johnny.
And then he would tell me a story how once, not only once, but there were episodes when his ex-girlfriend would get very aggressive and would take a knife and just get violent, with the door, with all his property in the house. She would, rip everything and so on and so forth. It is very common for a girl to control every step that their partner makes. For example, you may be considering that, if a guy puts his girlfriend's photo as his avatar in his social media, you would think, okay, it's cute. Actually, it's not quite cute, and usually he is forced to do that. For example, his girlfriend might just take his phone and post her own pictures in his social media to show to other people that he belongs to her. And it is also quite common to see girls controlling their partners. For example, a guy just goes out with their friends or whatever, and a girl just, expects him to call her every hour, or to send her his location, or to send a picture, or to do a FaceTime, and so on and so forth. It is really quite common. And sometimes you would see, couples wearing the same couple clothes. They would wear the same pajamas, or they would wear the same t-shirts, the same pants, the same costumes, even the same boots. And you would think it is cute, but it is also another kind of ownership. So, how do Chinese people meet each other? Well, there are different methods. The first method, apps like Tinder. But if in usual Tinder you would meet for maybe Netflix and chill, or for some, casual date, in China, in those apps, you would actually look for a marriage partner. And instead of, listing your hobbies or listing some, interests of yours, in those, places, you would indicate the place where you work at, how old you are, whether you are ready to get married. The second method, through parents. It's not rare in China for parents to take a piece of paper and write down their children's background as if it's some job application CV, and then go to a specialized place where they would meet with other parents and also look for a spouse for their children. The third method, through friends. And I witnessed this procedure with my own eyes. Basically, two friends, one of my friends met another person, and then they were talking about their friends who were still single, and they were doing some sort of matchmaking. And this matchmaking was kind of special because they not only would say, okay, this is single and this is single, let's make them meet. They would actually talk about their background. They would be talking about, okay, she's right now 27 years old, she teaches English, and then she wants to have children. I literally have heard it, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. And some people might have like 3, 4, 5 dates per day. And in those dates or job interviews, marriage interviews, what they usually discuss, they discuss how fast they're gonna get married, what's the budget, what's the tally, what's the bride price, and things like that. Of course, they discuss, how much money they make, how much money they have, what do they have, and so on and so forth. So basically, pretty much practical questions, I would say. And when Chinese people just get into the relationship, usually the initial stage of the relationship they go through is called Aimei. And Aimei is translated as not clear. And why is it called unclear? Well, because it is literally not clear. The status of relationships is not clear. They're just sending signals to each other, but they're still not making a confession. And at that stage of relationship, what they usually do is, for example, they look at each other in a certain way and then they send a few messages. And because some people have, in the initial stage, they have so many dates, sometimes out of those dates, they would keep a few people that they have these not clear relationships with. And if it's a guy, he is usually called Haiwang, which basically means the king of the sea. Why is he called the king of the sea? Well, because he has as many partners as there is the fish in the sea. And if it's a girl, then she's called a Hai Ho. Hai Ho. The name just tells everything for itself. But yeah, it means the queen of the sea, and it means that she has as many partners as there is the fish in the sea. Then in China, they love to give each other some presents. That is why in China, instead of just one Valentine's Day, they have 3 Valentine days. The first Valentine's Day is the Western Valentine's Day, which happens on the February 14th. The second Valentine's Day happens on the May 20th. Why May 20th? Because in Chinese, May 20th is Wu Erling, and Wo Ai Ni means I love you. So basically, they sound very, very similar. So that is why that is also the Valentine's Day. And the third Valentine's Day happens on the 7th day of the 7th month according to the lunar calendar. And certainly on those days, Chinese people give each other gifts or they even send money. For example, on the May 20th, their tradition is to send 520 RMB, or they would usually send 520 10 times, or they would directly send 5,200 to their partners. Now let's talk about relationships with foreigners. So basically, just forget whatever I have said before because this does not apply to foreigners. Let me first talk about the attitude towards foreign women. In short, Chinese men consider foreign women to be very open-minded and very easygoing. They basically call them 开放. You probably will hear it a lot of times when you communicate with a Chinese person. And the stereotype, of course, comes from the movies, from Hollywood. Just look at the Sex and the City. I mean, I don't think this is sex revolution. I just consider those women to be just in my opinion, okay? Or think about the new TV series such as Euphoria, where literally a teenage girl becomes a cam model and people say, oh, freedom, and so on and so forth. No, it's not freedom. How can you approve a teenage girl to become a webcam actress or whatever you call that? And how do I know this? Well, I have a lot of friends who are models and they would tell me stories of, other girls who come to China and sleep with a bunch of guys. And no wonder that, Chinese men now have this stereotype of the foreign women and they would, on the first date, invite you to sleep with them. Maybe sometimes they would even not pay for your dinner because they think that, you know, foreigners do AA, go Dutch. And yes, some Chinese guys get married with foreign women because foreign women do not even have a bride price. If, for example, a Chinese girl would require from a Chinese guy a house, a car, a stable job, and a bride price, a foreign woman doesn't need any of those. So of course Chinese guys sometimes would want to find some foreign girls to get married with because they are so convenient. They have sex on the first date and they don't even ask, you know, for expensive gifts and so on and so forth. Of course it's very convenient. So girls, do not get into this, you know, trap, you know, like when you're treated like, I'm so surprised by some girls, yes, that are treated like shit in this country. When Chinese girls themselves, they would not tolerate this kind of attitude towards them. You know, my foreign friend, who is a beautiful model, would tell me some, you know, stories which make me freak out. For example, she says that, you know, she scrolls her Tinder profile and, you know, some Chinese guys even write in their profiles, no foreign girls. And, you know, I have a Chinese boyfriend and sometimes, you know, I try different styles of makeup and sometimes I used to do the Western style makeup and he would tell me, Aina, never do the Western style makeup. I like you to do the Asian style makeup. And he also asked me not to wear blue contact lenses, green or gray contact lenses. That is why I'm wearing them now for you guys. Because yeah, when we go out, I usually put on the brown or the black contact lenses. Basically, Chinese men prefer Asian looking women. And my friend, she told me that, for example, they would write in their Tinder profile that they're looking for maybe Korean or Japanese or sometimes white Thai girls and so on and so forth. So basically Asian girls. I know I might receive some hateful comments, some mean comments about this, but hey girls, just stop sleeping with guys on the first date, please. Please, because girls like my friends, they suffer from girls like you who, you know, create this terrible stereotype of foreign women. Okay, now let's talk about the guys, the foreign guys. Here there are two types, okay? Whether you are a white guy or a brown guy. Oh my god, I'm gonna sound super racist right now, but I also talked about this in my previous video. White guys are okay. Black guys are not very okay. Alright, for example, I go sometimes to Xiaohongshu and then I click on the picture of a Chinese girl and a black guy, and then in the comments I see terrible comments. Terrible racist comments. Comments like, oh, it would be still okay if it was a white man. Why is she sleeping with a black guy? They would say some really, really terrible stuff about black people. I'm not gonna focus on this, okay? But the fact is, the attitude towards white men is better than the attitude towards black men. And in my experience, I know my foreign friends who got married with Chinese girls, and usually they're not required to have a house and so on and so forth. But those guys are usually, you know, like very stable, very good, you know, white foreigners. With the income that allows them, you know, to afford a good life, I would say. So I don't think that, you know, Chinese parents would allow their daughters to, you know, marry a less fortunate guy. But why do Chinese people like foreign white men? Is because they associate white European men with money, because it used to be that, you know, those foreign men, white men, would come to China and they usually invest into China or they have business in China, and so that means they have the money. So China was really, really poor, and so this association kind of still exists, especially in poorer areas. But anyway, I talk about this more in my previous video. Go watch it if you haven't done so yet. Now let's talk about some problems that you may encounter in a relationship with a Chinese person, or even Chinese people encounter themselves. So Number one is actually running away from conflicts or hiding away from conflicts or just, ignoring the problems. You know what? Chinese people are actually very 委婉, which means they are not direct. They are not direct as us in the West. We like to say we don't like something. We say directly we don't like something. At least for me, yes. If I don't like something, I say it directly. And yeah, so if they don't like something, they whether leave you without saying a word or they just ignore the problem. They don't wanna, make a conflict out of it. And if a girl starts a conflict, a man usually thinks that okay, it's probably because of her hormones, because her menstruation, because of PMS, all this stuff. Or why are they not happy? Probably their bag is not expensive enough. And so what Chinese guys do is home basically to give expensive gifts, and they usually apologize. Whether they think they're right or wrong, they always apologize. And Chinese people are literally very not direct, and they just don't want another person to feel some sort of uncomfortable. And for example, if they don't want to see you again, they would say, okay, let's meet another day. And this another day actually never ever happens. And there is sometimes a very surprising reason for breaking up. For example, a person was dating his girlfriend for a few years and then he suddenly marries another girl and of course breaks up with his initial girlfriend. Why? Well, because the initial girlfriend simply only suited for love relationships, but the girl he married, she suited the marriage purposes. For example, she was accepted by the family and her maybe bride price was more acceptable. So yeah, all bunch of reasons like this. As for divorces, actually in China, the rate of divorce took a high splurge. However, it is still lower than in the Western countries. I think because still traditions, still quite a conservative society, and because they still stay in relationships, cheating happens. Cheating happens both on the men's side and on the women's side. I cannot say that, men cheat more than women. I actually sometimes think it is vice versa or it is the same. It's just the thing that women hide their cheating much better than the men. And there is one more very disgusting saying that I have to share about Chinese marriage. And this disgusting saying goes as following: true love happens after marriage. And at first you may be thinking, oh, true love is your wife. No, that's not the meaning, because the wife, she is for having children and for having family and just for the household, you know what I mean? She has to work at the same time, and at the same time she has to give birth to children and she has to take care of household. But the girl you truly love, she comes to you after marriage, and you meet her and you love her not because she can give you babies, not because your parents like her, not because your friends like her, not because she is this and that, but because it is her, and that is called true love. Do you guys agree with this? I actually share more about pros and cons of living in China and some more points about dating in my previous video. So go watch it and see you there. Bye bye.